This is the Truth Network.
Hidden treasures of the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. We get to dive back into the Song of Solomon today, specifically verse 16 in the second chapter. And what an amazing, beautiful verse it really is. My beloved is mine, and I am his. He browses among the lilies, is how that reads in the King James Version in English. And I can't help but just marvel at what Matthew Henry says about this verse. It says, what he is to me and I am to him may better be conceived than expressed. I agree with you, Matthew, that is just spectacular. And I've studied it, and it is very clearly just exactly what it says, that he is mine and I am his. And that possession is more than spectacular and like he would say, better conceived than expressed. And so, the question you can't help but wonder is, how do we actually experience that? Then it says something very peculiar. He browses among the lilies. And the word that's in Hebrew there that browses is the same word as to shepherd or to pasture. And it also can mean to feed, but when it's feeding, it has to do with sheep or goats. And then again, among the lilies, going back to the very beginning of the chapter where we said that we were the rose of Sharon and the lily of the valleys. And he said a lily among thorns is my well-beloved among the daughters. And so, here he is saying something that I think is really, it took me places I did not expect as I dug into that today. Because clearly it just speaks to his affection. And the more I thought about it, it's really spoken to perhaps better in a couple different places. Number one, I shouldn't say better, really, because it's just spoken to in a couple different places. It really helps me understand this more, I should say. And one place is in Revelation 3:20, where you might be remember the verse where it says, behold, I stand at the door and knock, and he who opens, right, he's going to come in and sup with him. And then it says, and him with me. And I don't know that ever stuck out so much to me as it did today, as I thought, wait a minute, not only do we get to eat with him, but he is going to eat with me. And then also you might remember in John chapter 4, when he speaks to the woman at the well, when Jesus is speaking to the woman at the well, after she leaves, the disciples come with the food and they try, you need to eat. And he says, I've got food that y'all know nothing about, which is to do the will of his Father, which is fascinating. It's fascinating. And so clearly here he is feeding, and clearly he is feeding with us. And so as I began to process this, all of a sudden it hit me that, we love to feed on his word. And I know that you're with me this morning feeding on his word. But the other thing, the other side of that is he wants to feed on our words. Is that if we are feeding on his words, he was feeding on the words with the woman on the well. He was feeding on the relationship because this was the will of his Father, that he enter into a relationship with her. And if you think about how when you're in a very intimate relationship, you eat their words, so to speak, that you literally consume their thoughts, and you begin to chew on the same morsels, however that works, you eat with them and they with you. And it actually is food. It's food for your soul, and it's soul food. But more than that, Jesus is very, very, very interested in what it is that you have to say. And I remember one time I did this interview with G. Gordon Liddy, and he asked me, he was Jewish, and he was talking about me being the Christian car guy, and he said, so you mean to tell me that when you're underneath a car, that you think God's interested on how you turn that wrench? And I said, oh, yeah. He's very interested in every aspect. And so don't you think he's more interested in what you have to say and what you have to think about certain things, especially deep things, And so I just went, wow. And in my time this morning with him, I just went, well, so I enjoyed it. He goes, well, what's on your heart? What do I want to talk about? Well, over the weekend, I went fishing a lot with my wife. We had the best time. We really enjoy doing that together. She doesn't like to fish. She just likes to sit in the sun. And I like to fish out in the lake near where we live. And we went out there for hours and hours. We probably caught 30 really nice fish. And they were bass, but I couldn't really figure it out because it seemed like their mouth was too small to be big mouth bass or largemouth bass, and they didn't have the coloring of a smallmouth bass. They fought wonderfully, and I was just pondering, and so Jesus and I went on a search to figure out what kind of bass these were. And after a great deal of research, he and I came to the conclusion that they were spotted bass. And that may not seem like, such for some of you, I know you think I'm nuts, but it's okay. He and I really marveled at some things about the difference in these bass. And when you look closely at them, and I had pictures of a lot of the fish that I'd caught, that they have these three lines that come out at where their eye is. And there's a space in the dorsal fin kind of between the top of the back of a dorsal fin on a largemouth and the other one, and they're kind of separate. But on a smallmouth, they're not. And so as I just went through noticing each detail of these fish that I had caught, it was spectacular, and Jesus and I had a great time. And so not only did obviously I eat with him and was very interested in what he had to say with me this morning, but he had every interest in the world in what I had to say. And as I'd been through the weekend really trying to figure out a way to stay in communion with Jesus more often, and I think I was missing, because I always think I'm supposed to be hearing from him, but I forget he's supposed to be hearing from me. And so, there's two ends of that, that he will sup with me and I with him. He grazes among the lilies, or he pastures among the lilies. It's a wonderful thought, something to think about and enjoy today as we, just try to process. And again, we can conceive of what that says. I don't think we can really do anything, but when we know he's our portion, but I hadn't really thought about us being his portion. It's hard for me to accept that, I guess, but that's just my pride in the way. If he thinks that he wants that, then I am more delighted than ever to continue to grow in my relationship with him, and I hope you are doing the same. It's so much fun. Thanks for listening.